Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It is April 8th, I think. And before we get started, I'm going to pull the carburetor back off the F20 and we'll do some more troubleshooting on it. This thing, you know, as you guys know, I've rebuilt lots of carburetors, but for whatever reason, this carburetor seems to be giving me a lot of issues. So we're going to troubleshoot that in a minute, but real quick, I wanted to give a shout out to Norm. He took our pulley shaft and he turned it down for our belt pulley, turned it down, and built us new bushings. I know Richard sent us a replacement bushing, but I was looking it over and it was on some of the areas on the very edge here. Let me try and find it. Oh, here it is. Some of the areas on the very edge, up in this area, I can actually see some cracks starting to form in the side. So I was kind of hesitant on using it, and I was checking around with a couple of other places, and Norm actually volunteered to make us some new bushings for the pulley shaft, and he turned down the pulley shaft, and he also made us a puller to pull the new bushings into the housing when we do get that back for the H. So big thank you to Norm for that. And you know, once again, the kindness for the H project, just it continues to amaze me. But let's get out front here. We'll pull the carburetor off the H and get it, or off the F20, and we'll get it on the bench here and see what we got. So hold on, we'll be right back. Okay guys, one of the things I want to talk about real quick before we start taking the K5 carburetor apart is this wrench set. If you do not have a 5-piece or however many piece an obstruction wrench set, the wrenches that look like this, you need to invest in this if you're working on these old tractors. Essentially, these will allow you to get your wrenches into hard to reach places, and for carburetors especially, it's usually this back bolt that mounts the carburetor to the intake manifold. They can be a real challenge to get to, but with a simple wrench set like this, I think I paid like $15 or $20 for it. Your problems will be eliminated almost completely. So highly recommend you invest in an obstruction wrench set. So with that said, let's go ahead and separate the carb body halves. Now the K5 has an upper throttle body, the middle bowl section, and then the lower choke half. So we'll go ahead, wrong one, start breaking it apart. Now I'm hoping I don't ruin the gaskets. You know, it's only been together for a short time, so they shouldn't be stuck together, I hope. But we'll find out. I'm not going to tear it completely apart just because it's mainly the float I want to look at. So we'll go from there. One thing we do have to remove is I believe it's a 3/4. Oh man, that's tight. I can really tighten that one down. Oh, there we go. Just have to do it enough to get it loose so we can get to this bolt here. Now, as you can see, even when you run these carburetors out of fuel, there's a lot of excess that stays inside the carburetor. So the only way to actually get all the fuel out is to open the bowl drain. So you can see this thing is very, very clean. So I did a spectacular job. This gasket did stick, but I'm hoping, I mean, worst case scenario, I can always make a new gasket. So I've got plenty of gasket material. I'm not sure why. There's still plenty of material here, so we barely lost anything. We should be okay there. Okay, so that's one part. Now we'll separate the choke body from the bowl. Here, I'll keep this stuff kind of within the frame so you can see it. Yeah, I'm not sure why this is giving me so many issues, but sometimes things, you know, keep in mind this thing is 82 years old, so sometimes things don't always go work like you plan. So okay, so this surface here I'm probably going to polish up on a piece of sandpaper. And same goes for this surface. I'm thinking that's a lot of our issues with leaking, is these surfaces aren't true. So we'll go ahead and do that. But I know these passages are clean. I mean, I know that for a fact. One thing I do want to do is, okay, I know our jam nut is tight on the load needle. Now if we look at, see, I even took the time to polish the venturi. All I did was use a wire wheel on a Dremel, but okay, now according to the instructions here, set carburetor on level with manifold facing down, which it is, 1 3/4 inch from the machine surface, which is this portion here, to the point of the float, which is, you know, the lowest point, plus or minus a 1/16. So this isn't the most accurate, but it does have 1/16 in it. If we measure, well, it's at about 1 3/4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust it down a 1/16 of an inch, which will allow less fuel into the bowl. Here, let me grab a... It will allow less fuel into the bowl, which should take care of our flooding issues, I hope. So, and this is a new float. I replaced it the first time I rebuilt this carburetor. I don't hear any fuel inside, so it shouldn't be a bad or leaking float. One other thing I'm going to try while I'm in here is seating, again, seating the load needle just with some light taps. Or I shouldn't say the load needle, rather the main needle and seat here. Just give it a few light taps to help it seat into place. We'll try that. And we'll adjust the float here. Let's see, give me a few moments while basically to adjust this float, all you have to do is bend these arms, and this one is a pretty stout built float, but we should still be able to bend it. These extra flanges that they have formed around here will make it a bit of a challenge, but we should still be able to do it. It's brass, so it should bend pretty easily. Alright guys, well, I took and polished up these surfaces as best I could. I removed as much pitting as I could. Same with this surface here and the intake manifold mounting surface. This surface on the top side of the throttle body I can't polish because the float bracket is riveted to the surface, but it's not really that bad. So these other ones were quite a bit worse. So that's that's about the best I can do without being able to re-rivet that bracket in place. So we're gonna go ahead and put it back together and give it a test run, but it should be significantly better as far as leaking goes. I reset the float to 1 7/8. It calls for 1 3/4 plus or minus a 16th. I set it to 1 7/8 just because this thing was leaking pretty significantly. So worst case scenario is we got to pull it back off and bend it down a 16th, or I should say bend it up a 16th, and go from there. But at this point it's kind of trial and error because I know everything is clean in this. Obviously it's clean. You guys have seen the inside, and most of you know how I take pride in my work, and I'm just kind of looking things over here. So whoop, that's too much. Got to make sure we keep this that should be fine. It's hard to get a good grip on this thing. It's a pretty awkward shape. Okay. And I'm reusing the gaskets simply because they should be fine. They're brand new gaskets, and we lost very little material. And with the amount of resurfacing we did with the mating surfaces, we should be plenty good now. So we'll get these things tightened down and give it another test run. Now, some people want to ask maybe why I don't use RTV to help seal everything up on these carburetors. Well, simple reason being, if I got to take it back apart to do any adjustments, I don't want to have to ruin the gaskets because they're all glued together. That's pretty much my reasoning behind it. Now, you could argue the same thing in putting an engine together, but at the same time, I don't anticipate having to make several adjustments inside an engine like you would a carburetor. But there we go. It's all back together. Oh, we got to put the bowl drain back in it here. Okay, let's go throw it back in the tractor and see what happens. Okay, well, let's give it a try here. Full choke. Ignition is off. Got about half throttle. Turn the choke off. We've got a lot of fuel dripping, but I think it's coming out of the fitting, so well, if we take the idle screw all the way out, it dies. But if we screw it all the way in, it still stays running, which means it's pulling fuel from somewhere.